Welcome to the Business at the Speed of Sell podcast, where you learn how to accelerate the growth of your online and offline businesses, profits, and personal income. Tune in daily to get the tips, tricks, and tactics that have generated over $100 million in online and offline sales. Now, here's your host, Anthony Flatt.
This is Anthony Flatt, and you're listening to Business at the Speed of Sale podcast. Today, we're going to talk about some tips for writing an ebook. Now, an ebook is a very valuable asset, and I know that in recent years, people have probably overused the term ebook in writing documents. I've seen people with 2 or 3 page documents call them an ebook, a 6 or 7 page report, call it an ebook. My personal opinion is an ebook is a digital book. So if you were to go to the bookstore, to the library and get a book, it's not going to have 2 pages. It's not going to have 7 pages. It's going to have 100 pages or 150, 200 pages, or it's going to have some real content. So depending on the size of font you use and the amount of graphics you include and the type of formatting you use, I would suggest try to make your book not much less than 100 pages. And depending on how good your content is, maybe it needs to be more than 100 pages. Now, I also would not suggest you putting a bunch of fluffy words in your book and going on and on and on in your book. People want the information. They want the information quickly. And if you're just droning on and on and on and on, they're going to put your book down. They're going to stop reading and they're going to get disinterested. So you definitely need to have some solid content, but you need to have some amount of content. You just can't do a 7-page report or even a 10, 12-page report. I would not strongly suggest it. I would strongly suggest having your content covering as close to 100 pages or more as possible and make those information-packed, content-packed pages. Now, I don't really have experience writing any fiction books. My only real experience is writing nonfiction books. But you could write fiction books and be successful. I know that folks have done that and do that all the time. It's out on, Amazon and Kindle, and it's a really, really big area, fantasy books, love stories, and so forth. I'm really more inclined to write a technical book, a business book, a marketing book. So I'm going to kind of talk from that perspective. For me, a book needs to be a real book, not just some collection of miscellaneous terms or miscellaneous content. It really needs to have some power-packed information in it. And in order to do that, you really need to kind of decide from one of 2 directions of how you're going to write your book. Is this something you're doing because you really want to just write? You're a writer, that's what you do, and you're just going to sit down and you're just going to, for fun, you're just going to write this book. That's going to end up being one kind of book. If you're writing this book because you specifically want to sell it, because you specifically want to make some money, I would think that that's a little bit different kind of book. Meaning that if you're writing a book for fun, you can put just about anything in it you want, and you may or may not sell it. People may find your writing style and your writing voice to be very entertaining, and you may sell tons of books, or they may find that there's no real information there and they're not interested. If you're writing for money, if you're writing to try to sell your book, I think, especially a nonfiction book, you need to really have that content be super valuable, be super relevant, and be something that people are already out there looking for. You don't really want to write on a subject that's not very popular or a subject that you're going to have to develop the market for. You really want to step into that stream. If you think of a fire hose, you really want to step into that fire hose and get your percentage of the water coming out of that fire hose. You're not going to get all of it, but you want to get your piece. Going out into the woods, hunting down that life-giving stream that nobody has ever found is a much more difficult path to follow. And I'm just a lot more inclined to chase where there's already customers. How do you do that? How do you find something that people are going to be interested in? Well, you can't just pick a subject and write on it, especially if it's something you're not interested in or something that you have no experience in, because that's going to come through in your writing. you really need to find something that interests you. So I would strongly suggest you create a list of about 100 words or topics, if you will, one or two topics that are interesting to you. And it doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have, I would literally just take a piece of paper and start randomly writing things down. Every activity you like to do, what your core passions are, what your family does, what you've done as a kid, what you did growing up, what you do for work, what you do in your spare time, and write all of those things down. And then I would go out and I would keyword search those, and I would see how popular they are in the search engines. And then I would start kind of sorting it by how popular certain terms and topics are. And then I would start to try to narrow it down and niche it down. I would find, within the top 10 or 12 topics, one that really resonates with you, one that you're really passionate about, and really niche that down. If you're very interested in a particular subject, try to find out a way to drill that down to a subset. So, if you're very interested in weight loss, and I'll use this as a bad example because it's a really big example, you can't just write a book on weight loss because everybody's writing books on weight loss. Everybody's got videos on weight loss. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of books and videos and programs on weight loss. But you need to be specific. So is it weight loss for salespeople or real estate agents, or is it weight loss for people that work in restaurants, or is it a specific kind of weight loss? Weight loss by doing water sports, weight loss by walking. We had the whole walking to music programs years ago, and then, walking to get fit and all of these different things. Or maybe yours is horseback riding and you lose weight by horseback riding. I don't know what your niche would be, but try to find your own little angle that is something different than what everybody else is talking about within a subject that is very popular and very specific. And then move on from that specific topic and think about who your target market is. Within your target market, you're going to find some target markets that have large groups of people. They have magazines, they have websites, they have associations. Those are some of the best target markets to go after. If you have a topic and you've niched it down to, what your specific thing is, and you like basket weaving, and you've decided to write a book on underwater basket weaving, and you go out there and you look, and there's no websites for underwater basket weaving, there's no community for underwater basket weaving, no association. People aren't searching for the term underwater basket weaving. That is probably not the best topic for your book. You need to go and find something that there's a following. Even being specific. Specific like toy tractor collectors, teacup collectors, people that collect angels, stamps, trading cards, any of that kind of stuff that you can niche it down. Not just collectors, not just memorabilia, not just sporting items. Really niche it down to something that there is a very specific, passionate following or community for. Once you've kind of brought this down to your target market, think about who your actual target individual would be. Who would be a person in your target market? What do they look like? What kind of job do they have? What do they spend their time doing? And when you write your book, really write it as if you're talking to that person. If you're specifically looking at them and having a one-on-one conversation with them. If you're talking to everybody, if you're trying to be so broad, hey, I want to sell my book to everybody. Well, it's kind of like standing on the top of the Empire State Building trying to shout down to the people down below because you want to get out to everybody. Maybe they see you, maybe they hear you saying something, but they can't hear enough and it's not specific enough for them to really care, so they don't pay attention. So really make it a one-on-one conversation, one-to-one conversation that you're speaking specifically and not to just this broad audience. This idea that I'm going to target everybody ultimately means you're targeting nobody. When you're getting ready to write your book, you need to definitely create an outline and list the benefits, even as much as begin each chapter with something that says, in this chapter, you will learn, or by the end of this book, you'll be able to, and tell the reader why they need to read that chapter, why they need to read the book. And also in the process of writing, let the reader know what your perspective is through stories that, of yourself, of your life, of things that have happened to you, of things that have happened to the people around you that support the topic of your book. People don't want to just hear the facts. They don't want to have data just given to them and read off. They want to hear how that was applied. How was that used? What does that mean? What's the story behind that makes that important? And when you're thinking about your specific chapters, make sure you're making those keyword specific. So when you're doing your searching for, what is my overall topic, also be looking for the keywords of what are my individual chapters. Now, I wouldn't say go and develop your book and write the title and write all the chapters based on keywords and then try to go fill in the content. That's going to be very difficult to do. It's going to be a lot easier if you just write your content and then go back and reread it and think of what the focus of that content is, and then go find some popular keywords that match that content. Don't do it the other way around. It's going to be very hard for you to go find some keywords and then come back and match your content to those keywords. So definitely write your content first and then go back through your content and decide what is the focus of that particular chapter, and then find some keywords that match that. Write the title of your book and your chapter titles last. Don't worry too much. I mean, you'll have an idea of, when you write your outline, you're going to have to come up with, well, what is this chapter about? But don't get sold on that your working title has to be the final title. And I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time, other than doing some keyword searching to find out what your topics are going to be. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time trying to finesse and hone in and perfect your titles for your chapters and subchapters. I would go ahead and write the content and then come back through and look at the content itself and see, okay, what does this content tell me? What does this content tell the reader? And then find those keywords. And lastly, just a couple quick tips on your book cover itself. I would not spend a large amount of money having somebody design a really slick-looking ebook cover. Honestly, you can probably create one yourself. It appears to me that in the research that I've done in looking at ebooks and looking at Kindle books and other digital content is that less is more. The books that have really fancy covers and lots of graphics and lots of crazy fonts tend to distract people. I think people are more drawn to a very solid, clean-looking book. A lot of people use a single picture, either a picture of the author, a picture of one thing, a building or something that really resonates with the book. So, something that'll catch people's eye to get them to pick up the book, but not something so crazy that it's got all this different artwork on it. If you think about it, and I see people do this all the time, and I think it's crazy with billboards. You're driving down the highway at 55 miles an hour, 60, 70 miles an hour, whatever the speed limit is, and you've got this billboard that you can see for all of a split second, and people put a ton of content on the billboard. They squish all the content together. They use very small fonts, and there's absolutely no way, unless you're walking down the highway, that you could possibly read that billboard, and you see it all the time. The billboards that get read the most are the ones that have a few words on it and a picture. And that's what I'd strongly suggest you do with your ebook cover is a few words and a picture. Put your title on there, put a subtitle on there, put your name on there, put a graphic on there, and pretty much leave it at that. That will end up creating a book that people will know what it's about, they'll know who the author is, and they'll have some eye-catching graphic to encourage them to pick up the book.
If you have a question for Anthony, then head over to www.anthonyflatt.com and leave him a voicemail message for a chance to have your question featured on the show. Thanks for listening to the Business at the Speed of Sell podcast at www.businessatthespeedofsell.com.